Well, good afternoon. I welcome you back with all my heart. It's good to be with you again. And I'll say again, all is well and everything is unfolding exactly as it should. That sentence is not an opinion on Maya, this world, the five senses view. That statement, I discovered, is a state of consciousness. When you have realized your true identity and are the consciousness that is conscious of all of this Maya, then indeed all is well and everything is unfolding exactly as it should. The lifetimes are unfolding, the play is unfolding, the drama is unfolding. Everything is going on exactly as it should unfold. I was woken up in the middle of the night yesterday morning and told very clearly that I need to say something about secrecy. The material that is presented in a class like this, as we said before, is not rational material. It is not material for the intellect. It is not material that can be understood intellectually. It is not material that can be understood out of context. It is not material that can be understood out of consciousness. The words are not the truth. The words are words that are used to attempt to develop the consciousness of the truth. The truth is always in silence. Lots of you have heard my favorite Zen analogy of this. I love the story or the picture of the Zen master who's pointing to the moon, and his disciples are all hanging all over his arm and prying open his fingers and looking at the back side of his hand and the front side of his hands and trying to understand what he's saying by this great study of the hand. And the Zen master is just pointing into the sky at the moon. He gestures with his arm, and they all try copying that gesture with their arms, and nobody's getting it at all. And if they would just glance up in the sky and see the moon, there would be no question. Now there's no intellectual discussion. Now those who have seen the moon, when talking to you, either know that you've seen the moon or you haven't. And if the Zen master dies in that minute, there is the one or two who have seen the moon, and there are the 30 or 40 who now form 30 or 40 sects about the meaning of the hand. This is the way Buddhism went. Buddha died, and there were 18 sects the next day. This is the problem. Relating to secrecy, secrecy is a spiritual principle. When you hear a truth or something that might be a truth, it should be taken inside. If you have a revelation, a click, aha, yes, I see it. If you see the moon, still it should be something taken inside, and it should be kept there quietly and secretly and allowed to develop and grow and prosper and become part of your being, part of your consciousness, part of your awareness. If you bring it out too soon, you will lose it. The reason is, if you take something from this class and tell it to a friend, the reaction will be, well, that's nonsense, or that's not rational, and this now will be added to your consciousness. If you take it to a meeting, the whole meeting will not get it. First of all, it will be out of context in the meeting, and second of all, the meeting will not get it. And since there is only one consciousness, the reaction of everybody is that makes no sense. That doesn't make any sense, which is the immediate reaction to any of these truths. It's always, that doesn't make any sense. And now your consciousness has just been engulfed with the that doesn't make any sense. Truth, I would say that anything that comes from a class like this, or even a Joel tape, probably wants to, that's new to you, that you've heard for the first time, regardless of your state of click on it, probably wants to be taken inside and kept there for a year or so. Eventually you will discover yourself saying that to one person in response to their questioning. At that point, it's now yours, and it's time for you to be sharing it with one person. And much later than that, you will find that you're sharing some of this at the class level. It's also a disservice to other people, because, far more dangerous than a lie is something which sounds like it might be true, but which is said with lack of understanding. These truths, which can only be understood in consciousness, may sound sort of nice, and what we wind up then with is these cute little sayings which people can go around and say for the rest of their lives, every day in every way, I'm getting better and better, and stuff like this, which is blatantly not true in your own experience, unless it is in your own experience, in which case there's no reason to be reciting it. So be very careful about that. But the primary danger is that upon sharing it, generally you lose it, and you may not get that point again this lifetime. It may be gone. So there'll be lots more lifetimes. Never fear, everybody will get it all eventually, but it's important to keep it to yourself. I'm glad to see most of you back. We have only one question, so I assume, we have two questions. So I assume that all but two of you got it perfectly, and two of you have one little point that they're not absolutely clear on, or most of you have no idea what we were talking about, and two of you got enough that you can ask a question. I suspect the latter more likely than the former. I've talked to a number of you during the week, and it's real clear that this is our year's work. This is not something that you should expect to walk away from this class knowing. What you should walk away from this class with is a sense of it and a sense of the truth of it or not. And a sense of whether or not this will be the work you want to undertake this year. It's difficult for me, as I've told a couple of you. I recall very clearly listening to a teacher who was essentially saying, presenting the material that I presented last week. And I sat there knowing he was speaking the truth. I was that clear. But having no idea what he was talking about. Just not a clue what he was talking about. I mean, I heard the words, but I kept, well, what does he really mean? Because my mind could not accept the fact that what he was saying was exactly what he meant. And then I recall Robert saying something in one of the satsangs that I was there, and all of a sudden, I heard it. And my reaction to it was, well, duh, yeah. And then I thought back about what the other guy said, and yeah, duh. The guy was saying nothing but the obvious, as obvious as pointing at the moon, duh, yeah, look, right there. That's where the light comes from. So it's, and I look back, and it's difficult for me to remember what I didn't understand. So it makes it very difficult to do this sort of thing except on a one-to-one basis. I don't remember. I can't see why I couldn't understand it. The sentences are all very simple. It's just the being's total refusal to consider the possibility. What I'm telling you is that everything you see, hear, taste, touch, and smell, everything you believe is real. Every conditioned thought you have, every concept you have, even of yourself, including who you are and what you're made up of, what I'm telling you is that all of that is just your concept of the truth. It's not the truth. It's your concept of the truth. I guess we're going to do the questions later. Consciousness is all there is. And I will try to use the word consciousness in the absolute sense, that consciousness is what there is. There is God consciousness, individually expressed perhaps as impersonal being, not as you or me, but as the impersonal being which you and I are in reality. And then I will introduce the word awareness, which is a lot like consciousness. But awareness is the extent to which you are in touch with the infinity of consciousness. Consciousness is omnipresent, omnipotent, omniscient. Omniscient meaning all knowledge. Consciousness is the totality of everything. All there is consciousness. Awareness is how much of that you're aware of. And what we realize, what we see in our five sense experience is that portion of consciousness which we are aware of, limited by our awareness and limited by our ability to understand. So there's awareness both of the real reality and there is an ability to understand it. And so what we see in mind, i.e. space, i.e. the universe, i.e. Maya, is our best personal ability at outpicturing this reality, limited by what we're aware of, limited by our conditioning, limited by previous lives, limited by 100 things. Now, all these limitations are unreal, but they appear to be functioning because this appears to be the state we're in. It's so difficult for me to keep this straight. I want to go 100 different ways. You can only be conscious of things that are in your consciousness. I think we'll all agree with that if it's not in my consciousness, I can't be conscious of it. And we'll go two places from this. The first is, so if you look around and look out to the horizon out there and see the boats out there, or look 9 million miles away and see the sun, or at night look out over the horizon there, 200 million miles away and see Saturn, or billions of light years away and see the stars, those are in your consciousness. As far as you can see in the universe, it's in your consciousness. Or you wouldn't be conscious of it. On the other hand, the back of this chair is not in my consciousness. It doesn't exist as far as I'm concerned. It doesn't exist as far as any of you are concerned. This chair may not have a back. We can't tell. But the point is that everything you're conscious of, regardless of its distance from you or the extent of it all, is in your consciousness. So your consciousness is obviously as large as the universe. Now, the 3D world concept of all of this says that my consciousness is within my brain. And that's what we all believe. We all believe, here I sit in this body, and I'm sort of delimited. I'm outlined by my skin, and inside this skull is a brain, and inside this brain is my consciousness. And it gets a little difficult here, even for the rational mind. I mean, we're dealing with this now rationally for the ones who really want to be, logical. Now we're a little troubled here because now we have the entire universe inside our brain. This one quart-sized thing contains the universe. And see, none of you are sitting here with a problem with that. You're all sitting here saying, either refusing to think about that or saying something like, yeah, well, I know, but it's just a picture of all that's in my brain. And if you get to that point that you'll accept that it's just a picture of all that's in your brain, I'll rest my case, because that is exactly my claim, that it's just a picture of all that. It's not in your brain, it's in your mind, but it's just a picture of all those things that are in your mind. All you have is a picture. And the picture is right here, right now, in your mind, in this mind. Mind isn't really as large as the universe. Mind is just that medium which your current awareness, your current consciousness, outpictures its concept of what really is. Trying to think where the other place I was going to go, because I made real point to say there are two places I wanted to go, so I'd remember them both. Well, we'll get back there if it's supposed to be. So what we see is an outpicturing of our own consciousness. Now we're going to do a little bit of mind work, which for me is best explained by Meg Johnson, a wonderful infinite way teacher in Atlanta that some of you have gone to visit and share in her classes. Mind, in her terminology, and it's really good to draw this distinction, mind is an adjunct to you. I am consciousness. Mind is a tool I have, an adjunct to me, in which my current awareness, the current content of my consciousness, that which I'm aware of, outpictures. So what I'm looking at when I look out with my five senses is in reality my interpretation of the spiritual reality as limited by my own awareness and my own concepts. There's wonderful biological, there's so many things in physics that reveal all this, you know. I mean, if you go into physics or biology at any level, you'll discover so many things that make no sense except if this is true. Frogs' eyes have a wonderful property, and that is that they can only see things that move. And this is not that they don't react to things that don't move, it's that people who have put actual measurements on the optic nerve have observed that nothing gets transmitted that doesn't move. And yet all that data is there. The minute a fly moves, there's the fly, there goes the tongue, there isn't the fly. The frog's eye has evolved to the point that what it does is it presents the data that's appropriate. And similarly for us, when we look around, you know, there is just so much data being presented to us that our brain is filtering, you know, 99% of it because we couldn't deal with it. We only see that which we need to deal with, and we very quickly can get conditioned or condition our minds to not see that which is not relevant to us or of interest to us or pertinent to us or life-threatening. It's amazing how sounds disappear. The fountain behind me was so loud the first week, and now I seldom notice it. It's just back there because my brain has decided that that's an okay sound and we don't need to pay attention to it. So my reality is determined by, you know, my conditioning, by my understanding, by the content of my own consciousness. Now, what this really means is that I see what I believe. It's not true that seeing is believing, it's true that believing is seeing. It's true that what I'm saying and what, I mean, Joel and that sentence that we had from Robert, you know, is all the same thing, that what I'm seeing is an outpicturing of my consciousness of my beliefs, that my experience is an outpicturing of my own beliefs, that that if I want to change my experience, I need to change the content of my consciousness. If this is just an outpicturing of my consciousness, then it's all effect. There's no cause out there for me. I am the cause. What I deal with is an effect. And the change can't be made out there. The change has to be made within me. be quiet for a minute. See if this wants to go further down this path or not. I think we're still this week just trying to get a glimpse of the totality of this topic. What I think I am is just one more object in my consciousness. What you think you are, talking about personally, is just one more object in your consciousness. It has no more reality than the same experience you have in dreams when you are you within a dream, and you think you are that person, and that person that you are in the dream believes in their own reality, and yet that's just a picturing in your consciousness. When you're in the dream, you believe that that's who you are. And you believe that all the rest of the people in that dream are real. And you believe that it's a life and death situation. And then you wake up. Now, when you're in this dream, when you're in this dream, we have the same situation. You really believe that this body is real. You really believe that this experience you're having is real. You really do believe that these are life and death situations that you're facing. And it's no different than the personal dream when you're asleep, except that this dream is less personal. It's like the mind that you're dealing with when you're asleep. That mind, which is outpicturing the content of your consciousness, as weird as, or the content of your subconsciousness, as the case may be, that mind when you're asleep is once again outpicturing your consciousness, and that's a very personal mind. But there you see the full mechanism, content of your consciousness outpicturing in a mind which looks to you like space. In the dream appears to take time, or what appears to you to be time, and the whole mechanism is right there. Now we're doing the same thing here, except that at this level there is only one consciousness, of which we are in reality individualizations of it, and there is only one mind in which this picture is formed. So this picture is formed not only of my beliefs, but it's formed of the beliefs of all of humanity. It's like a human mind. It's like an outpicturing of human consciousness. Now, mind itself is a tool that may have been designed for other purposes and may have fourth-dimensional meaning and fourth-dimensional functions, but in this 3D world, in this Maya, in the five-sense world, it's just that tool which outpictures human consciousness. My favorite picture of this, which seems to work for me, is if we can think of all of our individual consciousnesses, let's use Margaret's word, intellect. Intellect is your own personal storehouse of data. And it is the data of your own personal experiences. It is the data of experiences in your past lives. It is there is also a rational faculty that is usually included within the intellect. Now, if we look at our own personal intellect as a sending and receiving station, a radio station, that is broadcasting our beliefs and receiving the beliefs of all of humanity, then we have a picture of what's going on. And it's like, if enough of us agree on the reality of something, it outpictures. You know, like the default is all of humanity has certain beliefs about what things look like, and mind is outpicturing these beliefs. Humanity has a lot of beliefs that are completely false, and these include all the beliefs of limitation, of lack. Specifically, ones that we'll be interested in over the next couple of weeks are the limiting beliefs that result in lack of supply or result in sickness or anything like that. There are a bunch of laws in the 3D world, and these laws are laws only in the sense that humanity believes them. The laws of germ law, the law of disease, the law of contagion. And you know that these are not real laws because they're broken continually by spiritual healers. Joel likes to point out that spiritual healers have been walking into hospitals and all sorts of places full of contagion for years when he was teaching, and none of them, there was never any recorded case of them contracting any disease as a result of going into highly infectious situations. And the reason is that that's not a law. It's a law if you believe it. So Maya is a reflection of the beliefs of humanity as accepted by you into your awareness. And it's at that point that we have the dominion that the various infinite way teachers speak about, that we have dominion over what is brought into our mind, what we allow into our consciousness, our intellect, through this transmission is what determines our own personal experience. The default is sort of humankind's understanding, and it is as modified by what I accept into my own belief. Now, if I can rise totally out of the human belief, if I can rise out of my entire belief in Maya, then I am in an experience of my oneness with God, and I'm in an experience of the perfection of God. I'm in an experience of harmony. I'm in an experience of bliss. And this then is what is outpictured in my life. It does not mean that everybody out there will stop lying and stealing, but it does mean that they will stop lying to me or stealing from me. It does not mean that nobody will be sick, but it does mean that nobody who comes to me will be sick. It does mean that there will not be lack and privation, and Robert's favorite term, man's inhumanity to man, but it does mean that it will not affect me. It will not come to me. When my consciousness changes, my picture must change, and that means that in my experience there will not be liars and thieves and sick people. People may present to a healer a claim that they have a disease, but for a healer who is in the God consciousness, that claim is immediately discarded as nonsense, and that is the healer's reality. And if the client, if the person with the claim has a consciousness which is available to being lifted, then that will be the experience of the person coming to the healer. But we'll get into healing a little bit later as well. The point is that the whole thing appears to be very complicated, and there aren't words that will tell you how it works, because any analogy that I draw is very limited and not true. But it's like there's, to the extent that human consciousness is not causing the outpicturing, then the outpicturing will be one of harmony and peace and wellness and all those things. As humanity gets involved, then the humanity's belief system in good and evil becomes involved in the consciousness, and that is what outpictures, and we live in the human experience, the Mayic experience, which is one of good and evil and health and sickness and all the dualities. Everything in Maya is in duality. It's all polarities. For everything there's an opposite thing, and it's only when you get into the consciousness of your reality, of your oneness with God, that these dualities disappear and stop having any effect on you. I guess the only other thing I want to say on that right now is that you cannot attain this consciousness we're talking about by trying to improve your humanhood, by trying to get rid of the bad things, because in the human world, good implies bad. If you believe in good, then in your consciousness there is bad, and mind must outpicture what's in your consciousness. So if you believe in good, you believe in bad, and there will be good and bad in your experience. If you believe in health, you believe in sickness, and there will be health and sickness in your experience. If you believe in love, you believe in hate, and there will be love and hate in your experience. All these things imply the other, and you can't believe in one without believing the other. So if you're seeking health, you're creating disease. If you're seeking love, you're creating hatred. If you're seeking wealth, you're creating poorness. If you're in the 3D world attempting to have any one thing, you are creating the other thing. You are insisting that also appear in your consciousness, i.e. in your experience, the outpicturing of your consciousness. So, I feel like I'm facing a wall. I don't feel like I'm making a dent. Look, guys, it's the moon right up there. Look. There's a wonderful Zen drawing of a monkey. There's a pool, and the moon is being reflected in the water in the pool, and there's a monkey hanging from a branch, reaching for the moon in the pool. And his arm and everything is, about a foot short. But this wonderful picture of this monkey hanging to the branch, reaching for the moon. And the Zen saying under it is, if he would just let go, he'd get it. Splash, he comes up, he sees the moon up above him, So let go. Drop it. All the feedback that I hear, all the comments, all the questions, all that is based on the existence of this individual person inside the skin, inside this human being. All the questions, all the beliefs, all of everything is based on the existence of that, and that's not real. The questions are in their very nature misposed, misquestioned, and therefore answerlessness. This is, I will just say a little bit now about Robert. Robert Robert Adams, my second guru, his only method was the method of Atma Vicharya, which is self-inquiry. Atma is the Sanskrit word for soul or self. And the only method is, for instance, if you want to stop your mind, the usual approach is to try to stop your mind. And Rashneesh used to laugh and say, "How will you stop your mind with your mind?" And he would just laugh and cackle hysterically at us. Robert would say, "Don't try to stop your mind, because you see, in trying to stop your mind, what you're doing is giving reality to this being that has a mind, this I that has a mind." Robert would say, "Inquire, to whom do these thoughts come? Find out who's thinking these thoughts." We spend all our energy, we as individuals, here's a good case where we can see what transcendence means. We spend all of our energy trying to transcend our mind. And we are transcendent of our mind by our very nature. The mind is within our consciousness, is within us. It's a piece of our consciousness. We are transcendent of our mind. But when we get into the idea of trying to transcend our mind, now we're back to the small self, the self with the small s, little I. And little I can't possibly transcend the mind, because little I is the mind. The mind is just little I. The ego, where I'm saying mind, you might want to use ego, but the ego trying to transcend mind is a joke, because that ego is the continuous thought process which is in mind, which is preserving the illusion of the small self, the ego. So the ego is self-generating itself by thinking endlessly. And the mind that the ego is trying to transcend is just a tool. We're already transcendent of it. It is just that tool which outpictures the content of consciousness. It's just our mirror. I heard for years the statement that, that the mind is a mirror. And, once again, you always sort of wonder what it means, but it will give you, once again, a sense about it. When you look in the 3D world in a mirror, you see an image of yourself. And that image isn't you, but you see this image of yourself. And, it's a more or less accurate reflection of what you are. Now, when you look out into your mind, you see an image of yourself. And you say, well, the one thing I don't see is an image of myself like the one I see in a mirror. But what you see in the mind is the image of your real self, which is the consciousness. What you're seeing is a picture of yourself, just like you do in a mirror. You see a picture of your 3D self. When you're looking out into mind, you're seeing a picture of yourself, your consciousness, which is the reality of you. You're seeing a picture of the content of your consciousness. And it really is, very, very, very close analogy. You really are you look in the mirror and you see that your hair is sort of tousled and you got a wart on your chin and a couple of things that you'd like to fix. You look out in the world and you see sick people and floods and a couple of other things that you need to fix. I mean, your consciousness is telling you what you're conscious of. What you're seeing out there is what you're conscious of. And what you're conscious of is your current state of awareness. So use your mind, i.e. Maya, i.e. your 3D experience. Use it as a mirror. Look into it and see what you believe. See what you're out picturing. See what's going on in your consciousness. See how much of the truth you're aware of. If you were aware of truth, you would see nothing but If your human self, your ego, wasn't here telling you about good and bad and right and wrong and tomorrow and yesterday and all that nonsense, and your mind, your thoughts were silent, then you would see harmony and wholeness and love and joy and peace and all those things. Those would be the reflections. You will still see the 3D world because your mind will outpicture. As long as you're wearing a body, your mind is going to outpicture something. Even when you lose your mind, you haven't lost your mind. People that lose their mind, as Margaret points out, haven't lost their mind. They're still seeing stuff. All that's happened is their intellect got scrambled. The mind is still working fine. It's exactly outpicturing what's in their contact. It's true for cases of insanity as well as our particular case of insanity called humanity. But one tool is to look out there and look at it as a reflection of your state of consciousness. And even in being in that position where you're looking at that as a reflection of your state of consciousness, you have already made a big step towards the transcendence of it. First of all, you have transcended your mind, because now you're not looking at that as real, you're looking at that as an outpicturing of your consciousness. And just one small thought further implies that if all of that is just an outpicturing of my consciousness, including this physical body, then I am the consciousness. So just in that practice, you can develop some sense of this. Robert's only practice that he ever suggested is the practice of asking, to whom does this come? When a calamity appears, ask, to whom does it come? When anything occurs, thoughts, good thoughts, bad thoughts, happy occasions, sad occasions, appearances of joy or disaster, the question is, to whom do these appearances come? What he's trying to do there is get you to become aware of who this individual 3D self is that is experiencing all this stuff, and peg it for what it is. What he's doing is going for the tap root of the problem rather than trying to put out all the little fires one by one. I was at an AA meeting the other morning in which people were talking about, they'd had this addiction and they'd gone to the program for it and got it under control, and then this addiction appeared and they'd gotten that under control, and then this addiction had appeared, and the problem is not the addictions and controlling the addictions. The problem is the addictive nature, and the addictive nature is a belief in consciousness. And this answer, just like the answer was for solving their first addiction, which is alcoholism, was to get in a consciousness that doesn't believe in that. AA works because nobody there believes that you need to drink today. And end of message. What are we doing on time? Let's be quiet for 2 or 3 minutes, and then we'll take a break, and then I'll come back and we'll answer the question and any others that may show up, if I can. Okay, let's see what the questions are. I always think of Rashneesh with questions. He would hold questions every other day would be questions, and he was always so serious. He was, the first question. Can you say more about how to stay in recognition, recognizing that it's Maya? That problem is, of course, the problem that we all have. I mean, this is the problem that people talk about in AA all the time, of turning it over and taking it back. How do you keep yourself 24 hours a day focused on something or other? And there are three things that will help you with being in recognition that I'm aware of. One is a cat trying to come through the door. One is daily work on reading spiritual books or listening to tapes or something like that. And be sure, if you are listening to tapes or reading books, that they are written by masters, not disciples. Don't get the books written by the Zen master's disciples that wrote 18 different books on what the position of his hand meant. Get the book written by the Zen master who's looking at the moon, or the disciple who looked up there and saw the moon. If you're going to read Buddhism, go to the Zen Buddhism. That's the live sect. That's the live path from Buddha. But reading works written by spiritual masters or hearing tapes of spiritual masters is very helpful, because the fragrance is on the tapes or in the books. You get through the book or through the tape the consciousness. The consciousness transmits as well as the words, to the extent that you're able to get outside of your intellect and not try to figure it out. So I always recommend that you play a tape before you go to bed, or part of a tape, or read 3 or 4 pages out of a book. I always recommend Rashneesh or Robert or Joel, but that makes sense because those are my gurus and teacher. There are lots of other people too, but make sure you get source material. The only way to have the experience is through meditation. In a moment of meditation, when you are meditative. Now, that does not necessarily mean when you are sitting silently somewhere with your legs crossed, but when you are in a state of meditation is the time that you can have the experience. And a state of meditation is, if you're walking down the Strand with no thoughts in your mind, you're in meditation. Bhagwan always used to talk about it's fine to go to the Himalayas and live in a cave and learn how to meditate, but until you can do it in the marketplace, you're not a master. A master is one who meditates 24 hours a day, one who is in the world but not of it, as Jesus would say. So meditation is necessary as, the experience is the goal of meditation. The practice of meditation is not what's necessary, but the experience of meditation is what is necessary. And the practices of meditation, the things that we usually call meditation, are those techniques which have over the years, centuries, millennia, demonstrated that they put you in more likelihood of having the experience of meditation than you would be if you didn't do these practices. That's the reason for all the spiritual practices. The third thing, and I'm just telling you the things that I have done consistently year after year after year and that have helped work for me. The third thing is that when you have an opportunity to go be in the actual presence of a spiritual master, do it. I've spent years, I traveled all the way to India. I went to India and spent 6 months at Rajneesh's feet, and when I was traveling over there, I didn't believe in gurus. But I knew he was mine. I absolutely knew that I had a guru in my heart, and that he was him, and that I needed to be there. And in my mind, I didn't believe in him. And I went over there and had a miraculous experience. But go sit at the feet of a guru. Until you've sat at the feet of a guru, you don't know what it means to sit at the feet of a guru. There's no way that can be told. If there's go where the light is. If you want to be angry, go hang out with angry people. If you want to be enlightened, go hang out with enlightened people. There's only one consciousness. Go immerse yourself in the consciousness. Be there. I traveled. People keep saying, it's all the way to here, all the way to there, so I always like to talk about when I was working with Robert. I drove from Torrance to the Hollywood Hills every Thursday evening at 6. The class started at 7, so I went right through the 5 High Stack downtown and out the other side at rush hour every Thursday night. And I drove to Canoga Park every Saturday morning to have breakfast with him, and to Woodland Hills or Encino or wherever he was talking on Sunday afternoon, or back out in Hollywood Hills. So I was logging, 8 hours and 250 miles a week to go hang out with that guy. But when I left, my skin buzzed. It had been so high. I mean, my skin, the cells in my body buzzed because I had been sitting in that presence until they stopped buzzing, which was wonderful because that means that I was now attuned and my cells no longer had the buzz. But I mean, it was even a physical experience as well as just the joy of being there. So hang out with the people that are doing the work. Also, individually, hang out with each other. One of the reasons for this center is that several people that I was working with say, well, this is so difficult to do this work because you can't talk about this at meetings and nobody else is doing this work and such like. So we really started holding the center and so that there could be a community that would form here of people who were doing the work. Now, all the people who made those comments, who brought about the start of this center, are not here, but they have served their purpose, and here we sit getting high. So those are the 3 things I know to do. But immerse yourself to the extent you can. And the other thing that works is develop little, what Jay Stennett calls stupid God tricks. Little reminders. Never walk out the door without, in your consciousness, acknowledging that God is walking out the door before you and that God is staying behind, i.e. the spiritual consciousness is what you will meet, and leave spiritual consciousness behind you. Don't answer the phone. Train yourself so that every time the phone rings, you wonder what disguise God is wearing, calling you this time. Get a watch that beeps every hour, and whenever it stops, whenever it beeps, remember who you are. Do whatever you can do, and they will come to you. Different different devices will come to you. The answer is immerse yourself to whatever extent you can. If you want out this lifetime, it has to be the most important thing on your on your list. I have always let. Once I got sober and read my first Joel book. In fact, I read, just a first chapter of a Joel book, and I found this incredible thirst, and that thirst has driven my life for the past 20 years, and that is the only important thing in my life. I have walked away from job. I walked away from a job to go to India and came back with no job. Nothing else has mattered. That is the first thing in my life. I do as much God stuff as I can, and all the rest gets taken care of. I'm not having a trouble making a living or finding joy in my life or people in my life. The rest of it is taken care of. But Jesus said, "Seek ye the kingdom of heaven, and the rest will be added unto you." And that's exactly what he means. Change your consciousness, and it must outpicture. And back to what we were saying earlier. If your consciousness raises, the picture must change. It's a tool. It's like the mirror. If you look in the mirror and you're just ugly, and you go into your bedroom and you comb your hair and come back and look in the mirror, the person you see in the mirror is going to have their hair combed. It must reflect who you are. And this mirror that I'm talking about, Maya, must outpicture. Work on your consciousness, and it must outpicture. It's a law. And it's not a human agreed upon law. This is a spiritual law. It's a law of God. It must outpicture. So do the work. And it's not in your power how much work you find that you can do, but be aware of that. Be aware of the fact that doing the work is how you get the work done. The second question. Barbara said there is a spiritual law of body, rest, nutrition, exercise. If our body is just a picture, how is this true? It has not been revealed to me that there is a spiritual law of the body, rest, nutrition, and exercise. Robert would say to Barbara, find out to whom this spiritual law comes. reality is you have to work at the level you're at. If you think you have a body and that body is limiting you, you had better take care of it. While you believe that you are this body, you had better be involved in exercise and nutrition and rest, because if you don't, the body's going to break down and you're going to discover that you're not able to do these 3 things that I just suggested as ways to allow you to develop the continuous recognition of reality. And I think it will also be true that you will discover that if you attain, that one of the outpicturings will be that you will get rest, nutrition, and exercise. So they're, it's one package, but certainly the body that doesn't exist doesn't need it. But any more than, if you're in a 10-year dream at night, you need to eat in the dream. When you wake up, it was irrelevant, but it was also irrelevant when you wake up, whether you starved to death in the dream or whether, whatever happened to you in the dream. That was all irrelevant. And in fact, what happens to your physical body is irrelevant to your reality, which is already awake. But if you think you're here, then you'd better deal with it here. And it's a matter of accepting the level you're at. One of the things that's been very interesting for me is to integrate Robert's work and Joel's work, because they seemed so different to me. And yet I know that they're both truth, knew that they were both truth, and I needed to see the relationship, and I needed to integrate that as part of my understanding. It was clear that here are 2 masters who are seeing truth, and I'm hearing different words, and it's talking about my understanding, not theirs. And that's done now. And the difference is in the audience. It's in the students. If you're talking to students who absolutely believe in the reality of Maya, then you had better talk about the nature of Maya and the techniques of Maya and various things that will allow people to prove that Maya is Maya and help them get out. Robert always had very small gatherings. Typically 20 or 25 people would be around Robert, and he did not travel and teach. Joel traveled, 60,000 miles a year and taught students in 5 continents and 15 countries, and he probably had 10 or 20,000 students that he was actively involved in teaching at one time. And Robert typically had 15 or 20 or 25 and used to lament that he didn't have 5 good students, which was all he wanted. What would happen there is, Robert only taught at the highest level, and what would happen there is that the people that couldn't hear that would come and go, and a few people stayed. And Joel was teaching at a whole different level, and to people who are at a whole different level. And it's all path, and it's all getting there. And Joel has lots of students who are teachers, and who have students who are teachers, and who have students who are teachers. So it's alive. I mean, Joel transmitted because he transmitted it to people who are able to transmit it to people. So, the infinite way is 3rd and 4th generation now, which means that it's a living truth. But Joel was just talking to different people, and the answer is how this 3D world works is relevant if you're in the 3D world, and if you're not, it's irrelevant. Very few of us are not. So mostly it seems relevant. I think that's all. The third question. This has been the third question. Can you talk more about free will? Where do my compulsive, obsessive thoughts come from? 2 questions. That's third. The third question is, can you talk more about free will? I think that's probably the most dangerous thing to talk about in spiritual classes, because it is so easy to be misunderstood and interpreted as having license to do whatever you want. And again, it depends on what level you're at. Ramana Maharshi was asked this question once, and he raised his arm. And he said, that movement was determined before I took this body. And what he meant is that nothing that Ramana had done, or any of the people that had come to him, or anything that he had experienced, or any of that had anything to do with free will. The thing to let me do this side of it first, and the 3D Maya reality is the opposite of the 4D experience. And so the free will in the 4D, in God, there's only oneness. There's only God consciousness. The answer to the question is, who is there, who can have a will separate from God? The idea of individuals having free will denies the entire fundamental truth, which is that all there is God. God expressing itself as individual being, but all there is God. And so how can there be, so who has the free will? An example that's often given is if you're watching a movie and a character in the movie is, let's say, it's a morality play, let's say, and here's a character in a movie who's torn between doing the right thing and the wrong thing, and the whole movie is about his making the decision, and finally at the end of the movie, he does the good thing or the bad thing. Okay? Now, 5 minutes into the movie, when the question first arose, the answer was at the back of the movie. It was in the can. And the people that saw the movie yesterday saw the answer. It's just that you're seeing it today, and you're seeing all this turmoil about decisions to be made and such like. This whole thing is a dream. When there's a decision, when you dream about something, about someone who's making a decision. I'm having a dream now, and I dream that I'm with Joe, and Joe is trying to make a decision, and Joe decides to do this or that, and Joe exercises his free will. Well, and based on that, I choose to do something or other, or not choose to do something or other, and then I wake up. Well, first of all, did Joe have a free will? Who's Joe? Who's this Joe? A figment of my imagination. Well, who's this I that made a decision based on Joe? A figment of my imagination. There was no Lee in the dream, and there was no Joe in the dream, and yet both exhibited free will, and both could have held a conversation in the dream about free will and known that they both had it and agreed and such like. So what there is God's will. Now, the danger is the picture is not real. The question is always back to the same knot. The question is, do I have free will? And the answer is, does who have free will? Because the question is, once again, the assumption is based on separateness from God. Now, I will say from the other side that people who obey the Ten Commandments, more or less, are more likely to come to the consciousness where they obey the two commandments. All there is God, and love your neighbor as yourself, because your neighbor is yourself. Okay, you need to clean up your physical act in order to get to a consciousness where you can start working on your consciousness, and you need to do that before you can come to the next level of consciousness. And so there appears to be this sequence of cause and effect, and it appears like you need to choose to stop murdering people. in order that you can get to until you give up murdering, you're probably not going to get to where you can love your neighbors yourself. And it seems like you need to make those decisions. And the fact is that enlightenment can happen at any point, whether you've made these decisions or not. But within the dream, always, or as Robert would say, so to speak, it would appear that the enlightenment is more likely to happen as a result of cleaning up the act. And so one way of looking at it is I should make the decision to clean up my act and raise my consciousness so that I can become more enlightened. Another way of looking at it is that the fact that I appear to have made the decision to clean up my act probably indicates that I am, in fact, in this lifetime closer to the enlightenment than if I haven't made that decision. But always recall that all this making decisions and what's going on is all effect. It's none of it cause. If Lee decides to do so-and-so and behaves differently, the Lee who decided to do so-and-so and behave differently and did so-and-so was all effect. It was not cause. That Lee doesn't exist, never did exist. That's all an out-picturing of consciousness. And so when you see Lee does something that appears to be causative and something over here appears to be the effect, that's the lie. There is no cause out there. It's all effect. It's all out-picturing. It's all an out-picturing of consciousness. And all we're really witnessing is a vignette of a particular level of consciousness between rock and God. Advice I've heard is that the wisest plan is to act as if you had free will. But of course that makes no sense at all except in the contents of the dream. Robert would say, so to speak. I loved it. Robert used to, that was his, every time Robert said anything at all that sounded like a sentence, a truth like that, he would always say, so to speak. And it was just, there must be, in any given tape, there must be 25 so to speaks, and, there must be 10,000 so to speaks. All the time he was talking, he would say so to speak, which means that he was continuously aware of the fact that he's talking about nonsense, but then that's the level of the question. There appears to be, and those who are closer to realization are those who appear to be acting as if there were free will and who appear to be making the wise choices. And but it's all an appearance. The result's in the can. Remember, you're already enlightened. You're already this enlightened being. You're already this pure enlightened consciousness. So this is all totally irrelevant. Where do my compulsive, obsessive thoughts come from? World mind. You're a receiver, and that's being transmitted, and we tend to pick up those transmissions which are pertinent to us. Consciousness, and again, this is, so to speak, consciousness is sort of broken into different groups. You tend to affiliate, with, you tend to pick up those beliefs that are pertinent to people that, you tend to pick up those beliefs of people who appear to be kindred to you, i.e., I'm more likely to hear the white male American Hermosa Beach 56-year-old beliefs than I am the black female 30-year-old Mozambique beliefs. And my picture will outpicture that. We tend to believe those things which are believed by, in our community and by our age group and our background and such like. We tend to pick up those beliefs, and the fact is, if you're living in beautiful sunny Southern California and you're young and American, you're in a very compulsive society. The society is all about not thinking not realizing who you are, what you're doing, going to any length to be entertained. Society is all about avoiding finding out who you are. And it's about being prettier and stronger and smarter and pursuing pleasure and about pursuing pleasure to the point where we're jaded and then moving on to something else. I mean, pursuing that fix out there is what society is all about, and I mean, society is compulsive and obsessive. I mean, the thoughts are in society. It's just, that's the transmission, and we tend to pick up those things which can fit into our current concept of ourself. Those things which are amenable to us. In the silence, there is no compulsive behavior. Those thoughts can be used as a stupid God trick. If you have a particular thought or obsession or something that is very repetitive to you, you can use that as the trigger to remember a truth. I found it very useful in one particular area whenever an image came into my mind to remember that my kingdom is not of this world, which is just which is a formalization of nonsense. But that was Jesus' statement, and what he's saying once again is that enlightenment, my kingdom is enlightened realization, and this world is Maya. And he's saying my kingdom is not of this world, and so I have used that as a catchphrase to remind me that what I'm seeing is just Maya, is just a picture. If it's a supply issue, and we'll probably get into that next week, if it's a supply issue, then thy grace is my sufficiency in all things, or I am perfectly connected to the source of everything, or some such thought like that. Whenever you're confronted with a picture of lack or something, can be used as that can be used as a trigger. Or if you're going out to compulsively buy, once again, my kingdom is not of this world. These things aren't real, is what that says to me. That's a device. So you can use these things as devices. I think I will just give you I printed up copies of the 4 principles, and they're over there on the table next to the wall, and we'll play with the second one this week. The first one that we worked with last week was everything is a projection or a manifestation of the mind. With no mind, there's no universe. Robert's use of words is slightly different than Margaret's. Everything is a projection or manifestation of consciousness, of my awareness in the mind, is the way Margaret would say it, but he's saying the same thing. And with no mind, there is no universe. In other words, universe is entirely in the mind. So don't quibble with me about what's projecting. The fact is that what we call a universe is really a projection in mind. All right. The second one is we are unborn. We do not prevail and do not disappear. We have no existence. We are living the mortal dream. Neither born nor dying. We were there before the birth happened. We will be there after the birth ends. We were unborn and do not disappear. When after the death happens, we will still be there, untouched by either the birth or the death. We do not prevail, meaning that we do not exist now. We are not prevailing at this moment. There is no we. This is the small we, of course. We have no existence. We are living the mortal dream. And you can play games with who is this we that's living the mortal dream, but that's the appearance. So play with that one. See if you can get any sense out of that this week. I spent a year on these 4 principles. And in fact, I found them so interesting that, in Robert's volume 1 of the transcripts, I was the one that transcribed those 4 talks because nobody else had done so, and I just found it so wonderful to listen to Robert talk about these 4 principles in a mystical vision that he'd had, talking about these 4 principles, and then he'd come back the next week, and he would, and there was this group of people that were there listening to him, and then the next week he would come back and he'd say, well, who can tell me the first principle? And there's this deathly silence, I mean, nobody had heard a word. And this went up week after week. Finally they got the fact that they were going to get a quiz, and so they could mumble them, but, so play with them. This is another device towards a thing to play with. Go walk on the Strand and tell yourself this and see what it feels like, or see what it would look like. Okay? Okay, let's go back into the silence for a minute.